Right, so I think we're going to start again. Right, so this was this is the kind of question that you get in Israel, but someone wouldn't be smart enough to have spotted this gap that needs filling in Britain. That's why I like coming here. Smart questions. How do you solve a problem like paying a million shekels in 2 hours using the traditions? I'll tell you how. Okay, how do you solve the problem of finding a million shekels in 2 hours?
Can I ask for a group conscience to turn off the air conditioner? I mean, just to see a vote.
We give you the response, we give you the authority to
No, I want to do a group conscience. I know it's controversial.
Maybe you can decide that telepathically. Right, so how I solve that particular... Okay.
Our problem is lack of power.
Our dilemma.
Okay, so we're moving again. Right, so what concept 3 tells me is that I am delegated certain authority to act, to ask for help, to consult where necessary, and to report back. And then, where are the concepts? And then concept 10 tells me that service responsibility matches service authority. So in this situation, I'm only as responsible as far as my power extends. In that situation, my power, my authority extended to making certain phone calls. I had no power or authority over the response of the people that I was calling, so I didn't need to feel guilty if they said no. So that I could be at complete peace in this situation, I was just responsible for asking the right questions from the right people. I asked for help from some of our shareholders who are the directors of big German investors in our company. I consulted with the other directors saying, can I call this person from this company? They said, yes, call them. So I was acting within the scope of my authority and responsibility, practicing concept 3. They gave me the money, or rather they gave the firm the money. And the reason why, they trusted me, they didn't trust the other 2 directors. I was really boundaried in that job. I knew where I stopped and other people began, and I didn't engage in any manipulation of the shareholders. I presented the facts, and they could do with the facts what they wanted. This is the money that we need. This is why we need it. These are the forecasts. These are the assumptions. Would you like to invest? And there's a line in the big book in step 9 where it says, if our manner is calm, frank... Oh, is it step 9 or step 12? You can look it up later. Calm, frank, and open. I think it's step 9. And on the phone, I was calm and frank and open. I simply laid out the facts, and I didn't try to get involved in their decision. It was their decision. They could see what was going to happen if we didn't have the money, and they wired the money. And so in that situation, it was probably lucky it was me making the phone call, not the manipulative other directors. How to practice the traditions in relationships. Tradition 1, I'm going to talk about my other half, who is a man. We've been together for 15 years. We've been married for a few years. The principles, however, are obviously universal. 10 years ago, I got a letter from lawyers. I was being sued for a large amount of money for something that my other half had done. It was basically, for those who are interested in technology, he was downloading feature films for free off BitTorrent or whatever it was called. And the deal with BitTorrent was whatever you downloaded is now available to the world. And so he downloaded these feature films. The copyright holders of the feature films said, "You're potentially making this available to the whole planet. So we're going to sue you because you're making our film available to the whole planet." It was my internet connection. It was his action. And the traditions and the concepts both applied to this situation. I didn't immediately go crazy. I got the letter at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. By 5 o'clock, I was now crazy. I'd been to a meeting. I came back. I'm going to lose the house. They were suing initially for just a few £1,000s, but he had around 200 other films he downloaded, and potentially if they confiscated the computer, they would find all of the other films. It could be hundreds of thousands of pounds that I'm being sued for. And I went home and I couldn't talk to him. And I went into my study and I closed the door and I thought, I'm going to figure this one out on my own. But a thought came into my mind. I'm going to open my sappy little Al-Anon book, and I read some sappy little sugary reading. Now, the reading had nothing to do with what happened next, but the reading, I believe, demonstrated to my higher power I was willing to look for a solution. And the next thought was, your other half is sitting in the other room wondering what on earth is going to happen next. You need to go in there. He was the one who'd done something illegal. But I went in there. I said, my job is to comfort him. And I said to him, nothing is going to get between us. If I lose the house, this will not get between us. Whatever has happened. We'll deal with it. But this is not going to affect our relationship. This is tradition 1 in practice. So my marriage vows include words to the effect of "till death do us part." This is for the rest of my life, whether I like it or not. You don't expect a gay man from London to present a traditional value that, our view is divorce would not be a question because we are committed, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. And once that commitment is there, the job is to make it work and being committed to making it work, because unity is the important thing. I worried for many years in that relationship, what am I bringing to this? He's not interested in my work. He's not interested in AA. He doesn't want my opinions about his job. I missed the value of the relationship, which is that we formed something together which is strong enough for both of us to be able to do what we need to do in our individual lives. Part of my sickness before recovery was I would get into a relationship with someone and merge with them. I lost my identity. The sanity I've been taught is tradition 7. I'm fully self-supporting through my own contributions, which means my reliance is 100% on God. I don't rely on anyone for anything, so that anything my other half gives me is for fun and for free. It's not paying a debt. It's not paying an obligation. Sometimes he does a lot around the house. Sometimes he does nothing around the house. Sometimes he does nothing for 5 years. Then he buys us a new car. I'm the only one who drives. So I don't get to choose what gets given when. I don't get to count who is giving what. I give of myself. He gives of himself. Whatever it is enough, because my reliance is on God, tradition 7. Tradition 4. I'm autonomous in my life. He is autonomous in his life. I have never been inside his phone or his computer to see who he is talking to. And one thing that's just true is that there are many different types of love. The Greek language has many different words for love. There is romantic love and sexual love and brotherly love and family love and and godly love, all of these different types of love. My other half is allowed to have his own emotional life, and I don't get to look. If he wants to let me in, I'm pleased. If he wants to keep certain areas of his life to himself, that's fine by me. I do not have a right to enter his private territory. Because he has a safe private domain, he can give himself to the relationship from a place of security. And because I have my own private emotional life, I can give of myself because I have a sound, solid foundation. And in the big book, it talks about meeting on the common ground of love and understanding. That means that we are not one circle, we're overlapping circles. And that's far stronger than the alternative. I've had relationships where we are one circle on top of another, and there is nothing new that has been created. You still have one circle. You have 2 circles with an overlap, and you have something which is stronger than the parts. So this autonomy, I'll give you a practical example. I am at home neat and tidy and efficient. So I don't own an object that doesn't have a stated purpose. My other half, Jonathan, is a hoarder. When I met him, he had 100 pairs of jeans. 100. You can't wear 100 pairs of jeans. We live in a small flat pretty much in the centre of London. There isn't room for a hoarder. But we've decided, I have my area, and I can do what I want in my area. He has his shelves, he has his cupboards, he does whatever he wants with those shelves and cupboards. I don't get to have an opinion on how crazy, why do you need this stuff? Why isn't it organised? Why are there red clothes next to green clothes? It makes no sense. I'll come to the question in a second. But there's a common area, and that's the floor, the surfaces in the kitchen, and we've negotiated a settlement, which is items may be left temporarily on the floor or on surfaces, but by the time we go to bed, they're on a shelf or in the cupboard. Nothing is on the floor. So I have my private area, he has his private area, we have a common area. The point about those different types of love is that because I'm completely committed to one person to spend my life with them, doesn't mean I don't have emotional ties with other people. Because I have emotional ties with other people, which fit those 5 or 6 different Greek words for love, love doesn't know anything about human categories. Different forms of love arise in different forms of relationship they're not apparently supposed to arise in. Just because I have affection for someone doesn't mean we need to go to bed together. This was news when I got to recovery. I thought if you feel something for them, you have to take your clothes off. I don't know where this information came from, but that was the message. We both have emotional attachments with friends come and go. There are people he talks to about stuff. I don't know what they talk about, but he needs to talk to these other people. Good. I'm not supposed to be his higher power. I have friends I talk to about stuff that would bore my other half senseless. But we have our own private areas, we have our own private lives, we have a common area. Someone asked about tradition 5, what's the primary purpose of the relationship? What I've learned is that I have 2 primary functions in my relationship. My first one is to forgive the other person for everything. And if you live with someone, you're going to discover what you think is unforgivable, unacceptable behaviour. And what I've learned, what I've been taught is to find someone whose faults I could eventually learn to live with. There are things I wouldn't live with violence, I wouldn't live with a gambler, I wouldn't live with an active alcoholic. But there's a lot of other stuff. My friends would be driven crazy if they had to put up with, Jonathan has to put up with. A lot of people will be driven crazy by me, but Jonathan puts up with me. So my primary purpose is to forgive the other person, to forgive Jonathan entirely, which means to withdraw all judgment from him. And so I have ceased to see any of the faults as faults on a good day. I'm allowed 1 bad day a week. But I've been taught also not to act out. So if I can't keep it inside, I take myself away so I don't inflict my judgment on him. That's primary purpose number 1. Primary purpose number 2, I'm going to keep saying it, to give of myself for fun and for free, expecting nothing in return. A relationship, Dr. Paul O would say, is not 50-50. You give 100%. They give 100%. Now, when they give 100% to you, it looks like 55. When you give 100% to them, it looks like 55. You put together 55 and 55, you now have an agreed score of 110. If each of us put in 50%, we'd end up with a total score of somewhere between 40 and 50. So I aim to concede, to give way on almost everything, but occasionally I set a boundary where something where something is genuinely important. There are 4 or 5 different types of boundary I set. The first one is when I say I'm not going to do it or I can't do it. And I will do this with sponsees. I could answer the question, but I'm not going to. I don't think it's the right thing. I think you should work this one out. Come to me with your best answer, then we'll discuss. That's a form of boundary. Sometimes I just can't do something. I get invited to... My other half goes to pop concerts. I cannot bear pop concerts. I have a problem. I have Asperger's. I have problems with sound, with excess stimulation, and I can't do it. I just can't do it. This is a boundary. The other three boundaries are: please stop doing it, please start doing it, or could you do it differently? Very simple. And what we've agreed in my relationship is we're allowed to make a polite request, and the other person is allowed to say no. And if they say no, give it a bit before you ask again. Doesn't mean you can never ask again, but don't keep asking. But to always ask in such a way that the other person is allowed to say no. My experience with setting boundaries now, sponsorship relationships are very boundaried relationships. You're kind of teaching boundaries to people as you do it. But with my relationship with my other half, in computer games you have like a certain amount of energy or a certain amount of power, and every time you do something you use up some of the power. With Jonathan, I have a limited number of boundaries I can set before I start damaging the fabric of the relationship. So I treat boundaries as something I'm occasionally allowed to do if the situation is very extreme and it's practical. If it's psychological, if it's because I don't feel respected, hard luck. If I want respect, I get a puppy and train the puppy, you'll have respect. If you want obedience, get a puppy. But that's not what I'm looking for from a relationship. Tradition 2, we make decisions which affect our common welfare together, and we're not done deciding until we have discussion, vote, and substantial unanimity, which is 2 out of 2. And any important decisions which affect both of us, we take full part in. Let's look at other aspects. That giving of yourself for fun and for free is absolutely a tradition 8 question. By that, I need to say what that means is I'm not keeping score. When I do something for him, whether he does something for me is irrelevant. And I don't stop doing things for him if he stops doing things for me. Someone talked about emotional availability. What do you do when your other half is not emotionally available? My other half was not emotionally available for about a year, 2 years at one point. I still don't fully know why. There's some horrible, horrible stuff that went on at work. He never told me about it. But he came back. And in the meantime, if I wanted to talk to people, I phoned some friends. I have a whole fellowship around me. I can't dictate to him what he had to offer me. It's all for fun and for free. So I count up from 0 and I practice gratitude for everything that is good rather than counting down from 100 and looking for everything that is wrong. So anything that is good is better than nothing, and you discover there are 1,000 things which are good. Tradition 10. No opinion on outside issues. My other half has a difficult history with his family. Again, I haven't asked why, he hasn't revealed, and I have no opinion on that and how he handles any of that. Yes.
How do you not have an opinion on something?
pain of having an opinion. They know when you have an opinion about it, and that becomes a wall between you and them. Hmm?
You put that in the thinking bubble? Like, how do you get rid of an opinion? You see something, I automatically form an opinion on it.
My best friend says, well, I can't remember who says it. He keeps reminding me of it. Maybe someone else originally says it. There are lots of things which Jonathan does which are eccentric. No one understands why he's 25 minutes late for everything. We just don't understand. But what my friend John says is, whatever he's doing it for deep psychological reasons that even he doesn't understand. So how can I have an opinion? How can I have a judgment when I don't have the facts? I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a psychologist. If I were a psychologist, I still am not a mind reader. A judgment is only valid in as far as I have all of the facts, as far as I know all of the possible consequences throughout the universe, in space and in time, of the thing that I'm judging. So it's not, how do I not have an opinion? How dare I have an opinion on anything? How dare I? I'm on really dangerous territory when I have an opinion about my own life. Is this good? Is this bad? I need to keep my eyes on what is God's will for me, which is, what is my right attitude here? What is the next right action? I thought the worst possible thing that could happen to me was that I would become an alcoholic like my brother who committed suicide. Me becoming an alcoholic was hands down the best thing that happened in my life. I judged Jonathan for not talking to me about work stuff. About 10 years after I first started judging him for not talking about work stuff, I realized why. The home we have together for him is his one safe place in the universe. He doesn't want to bring the material in here. He also knows that the work stuff is not real. He's not in recovery. He's not religious. He doesn't need to be in recovery. My sponsor thinks he's a mystic. For instance, if you ask Jonathan, when did Jonathan and I meet? He says, what do you mean? We've always been together. And the question you have to ask, it took a long time before people worked out the right question to ask. The right question to ask Jonathan to get the answer, 15th of August 2004, the way to get the answer is to say, when did you first manifest on the material plane at the same time in the same place? If you ask that question, you'll get the date. So why would he bring illusion from the material world into the holy space of the relationship? So you don't talk about business in shul. Same principle. It doesn't belong there. So holiness is about separation of what is holy and what is not holy. What is not holy is kept out. It's what Jim Willis said to me. Your psychological stuff, it seems real, but it will evaporate like a tornado. So a tornado is just made of the air you are breathing right now, with energy moving really fast. The tornado doesn't exist. It's air and energy. And when it's gone, there is nothing left except the devastation. It's not real. So this idea of judgment, I've never judged anything which wasn't on the material plane And everything I've ever judged doesn't exist in ultimate reality. It's surface appearance. When a wave forms in the ocean and drops back, does the wave still exist? Does the wave still exist? Does the water still exist? Has anything been destroyed? There you go. So if it can be destroyed, water can't be destroyed in that context. The only thing that can be destroyed was something that wasn't real in the first place. The wave is not there. It hasn't really been destroyed. So that's the point, is I've got to operate at the level of I'm with another spirit. I cannot let anything get between me and the other spirit. And that's why tradition 10 is so important. We have 5 minutes. Any questions?
I understand the concept of not judging. I just want to talk about this lateness because I relate to it. What if it negatively impacts, say the family as a whole, when somebody's constantly late and everybody's standing outside, like I'm supposed to just be, la-di-da, like I have no opinion on it, this is just, God's will. Like I don't know how to how do you deal with that when it's impacting so many people and there's just it's an obvious character defect and yeah.
Okay, good question. So an old AA member in London said, almost nothing matters, which was news. I thought everything mattered. But apparently, it was Andre, so it must be true. Almost nothing matters. So with Jonathan's lateness, there is one time it matters, and that's when we're catching a plane. So with every other time when we arrange to meet, I know he's going to be 25 minutes late and I'm going to be waiting. So I bring a book and I tell my friends, bring a book. When it matters and we're heading for the airport, I tell him the wrong time for the flight. He now knows that, so he discounts, and I've double told him the wrong time for the flight, and we have a system which works. So occasionally something matters and you negotiate a solution. But really, I haven't got time for more than 1 or 2 things mattering a week. There's too much life to be lived for things to matter too much. Because when things are mattering to me, I'm missing being in the moment, which is where I'm supposed to be. And I'm depriving myself of the moment. My judgment against him for being late is entirely created by me. The lateness is his, but my judgment is mine. So I'm not bothered by his lateness, I'm bothered by my judgment. And with that lateness, the character trait is basically being super relaxed about practical things. The good side of that is I'm in a relationship with someone who is super relaxed about practical things, lets me handle all sorts of important things. And I have Asperger's, and occasionally I have Asperger's meltdowns when I get sensory overload. So I'm careful, I carry earplugs just in case. Because he's really relaxed, he can handle an Asperger's meltdown. You do not want to see what my friends who are always on time, what they're like when I have an Asperger's meltdown. They freak out. So with every defect I want to get rid of in someone, that is the flip side of a virtue, which is the reason why I'm with them in the first place. And I've never found a defect of Jonathan's which is not the flip side of a virtue. Do we have a couple of minutes more? Okay. Any other questions? The lady at the back.
Thank you. Hi, I'm wondering when you say for free and for fun, where commitment comes into the picture.
I am committed to giving for fun and for free. So sometimes I have to make an effort to do it, but then it becomes fun in the doing. So
From the other person. In other words, if I can't expect anything from the other person because it's for free and for fun, how does commitment come in and like reliability?
there's there's a long story that Rabbi Manis Friedman talks about. When someone comes to your house, you offer them all the food to eat. When you go to someone's house, you don't eat all the food they offer because they're not going to stop offering. So you apply a different standard to yourself than you apply to other people. So I say to myself, I'm going to live up to high standards, but I do not demand those standards for someone else. But there is a decision point where I said with Jonathan, is this someone I want to spend the rest of my life with? I didn't make that decision until I needed to because the time was ready. And that's when I took the balanced view. Is this someone who is basically kind and responsible and reliable and good in a crisis, who doesn't have any of the deal breakers? You know what a deal breaker is? Okay. He's very good. So I made that decision once, and then it can stand. Maybe if it is possible, occasionally people suffer very grave personality changes which are permanent. It's very rare. But that's the point I make the decision. Once I make the decision, all the information which fed into the decision is deleted because I now trust this person, but more than that, I trust God. And there's a line on 118 of the Big Book where it says that, I think it's 118, if both of you are willing to spot and correct your own defects, there will be little need to criticize each other. Jonathan is someone who is capable of seeing how his behavior can affect someone else. So I might need to communicate things, but I don't need to fix, change, control him. So he treats my tidiness thing about the surfaces as basically a fact which is part of my Asperger's. I just can't deal with too many objects around. And he said the other day, it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's just a fact. I've adjusted to the fact. So if you choose someone whose faults you can stand, then you trust them, and then the Spanish phrase, que sera, sera, what will be, will be. Can we do a minute more? Couple more? Are people all right for just a few more minutes? If you need to leave, don't feel bad about, because I know we said 10 o'clock. Any other questions? Svi.
Limiting the number of sponsees? Or not limiting?
Limiting the number of sponsees. Okay, I don't. That's not a blank check. Because when someone asks me to sponsor them, I need to answer thinking, what is in their best interests? Am I the best person to sponsor? This situation literally happened today, where someone asked me and I felt I wasn't the right person, that they would get better help through another channel. And I can still be involved, I can still be available, but I can't be a sponsor to that particular person. But I will say, this responsibility, this ability to handle an endlessly expanding number, has grown only slowly. I needed to be in fit spiritual condition to do it. And I'm hesitant to tell sponsees to do what I do in exactly the same way, because people's lives are structured differently. I have my own business, I work for myself, I have an elderly mother I look after every day, but I don't have children. And so there are factors, and my sponsor is always talking about page 17, 18, 19, a much more important demonstration of our principles lies in our respective homes and occupations and affairs. So I've got sponsees that do limit the number, but it's not because they're following a rule, never sponsor more than 5, never sponsor more than 10, never sponsor more than 1. It's because they've said to their higher power, where are my energies best spent? Also, there are some people that need a huge amount of one-to-one help in the first year. That kind of person needs a sponsor who's available every day for a couple of hours for the first year. If some people I needed a whole group of people. We needed a team of people. I discovered afterwards they were all talking to each other to discuss tactics to make sure the story was the same. So there is room for different ways of doing it. So what I do, I practice tradition 9. I'm completely unstructured with my sponsorship. All I do, we have a conversation. I give you a task to do in the first 9 steps. If you're not in the first 9 steps, if you're beyond that, it'll be something else. There is always something to do. When you've done it, you come back. I'll be available. I used to limit when I said, okay, everyone gets half an hour a day, or everyone gets 10 minutes a day, or everyone gets 1 hour a week. That physically you can't schedule that. You spend your whole time travelling between venues to meet people. Half the people don't turn up. When they do turn up, half of them are distracted or bored or don't want to be there, or they're there out of guilt, they're there out of obligation. I want sponsees to have contact with me because they want to have contact with me, not because they said they would. I don't want people to call because they said they would call. I want them to call because they want a real interaction. And that's the only way you can keep it flexible and keep it growing. But also, there are conversations I have now with sponsees where I get to the punchline of the joke. I get to the thing that needs to be said within 30 seconds, where it would have taken 2 hours 10 years ago to find out where it is. But if you sponsor enough people, you'll discover that people are basically the same. The volume is turned up differently on different people, but the design is the same. You know those mixer boards in acoustics with different sliders? The design is the same. The sliders are in different positions. You get to recognize from the distortion through the microphone which of the sliders needs to be moved. It gets pretty efficient just because you've seen everything 1,000 times and you've been everything 1,000 times. Whatever they come to you with, you've gone through it, or they couldn't have told you in the first place. There are occasional exceptions when you're out of your depth. And my Jesuit friend says, pray for the grace to know that you are out of your depth. Turn them round, send them to someone else. So with pills, I send them to John. With people who have this problem, I send them to so-and-so. But that's how the list can keep going. Well, that's all I have to say on that. But any other questions? On traditions or steps or yes.
אני שאלתי עברית, אם מותר. מה לעשות במערכת יחסים שהצד השני לא עובד לפי מסורות ולפי עקרונות רוחניים, וגם יש לו דרישות גבוהות. זה אומר
What to do in a relationship where the other side is not working spiritual principles like tradition and concepts and also has high demands?
זה אומר שלפעמים אני אצטרך להחליט באופן חד צדדי. לא יודע.
For example, sometimes she will have to decide one-sided decisions.
It is very difficult. So I'm lucky with my other half that it's someone who is basically functional. My mother, by contrast, does not function very well emotionally, psychologically. She's 90. She's ill with lots of different conditions. Some of them affect her thinking. And she's had a very difficult life. Almost all of these principles can be applied regardless of whether the other person is also doing it. So I can mind my own business. Now, whether they're minding their own business is a completely different question. They can think about whatever they want to think about. But I can start to set boundaries. So I can say to someone, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not able to do this today. I can't do this, but I can do this. There are ways of rejecting where you, rather than just putting up a wall, you redirect the energy to something else. I can't talk about this right now, but how about we go for a walk on Saturday? We'll have a talk about some stuff on Saturday. I can't face this, but how about we go to your mother's next week? I can face that. So that I'm not being cruel to the person. Because when you put up lots and lots of boundaries, it's heard like you don't love me. So what I do with my mother, she has crazy demands. She thinks she can go back to the flat she used to live in. She can't unscrew a cap on something, and she turns the fridge off at the wall and doesn't know she's done it. She doesn't eat when she's on her own because she forgets, or she's too tired, or it's too much work, or she can't remember how the microwave works. Now, I've had to say no. You have to carry on living in the home. But here are 15 fun things we can do in the next week. How about we do some of these things? But also there's a principle in the concepts. The fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous makes decisions on policy and finance. So in my family unit, I'm part of that group conscience. However, because I'm the practical one and my name is on all of the bills, I have final decision on lots of things in the home. So with that legal situation with my other half and the lawyers, he had a view on how we should handle it, and I listened to that view. And we, in the end, agreed. By the way, what we did, I knew some of the best lawyers in the United Kingdom around media law. We paid a lot of money. We made the problem go away. And the problem went away. It was fine. If we hadn't agreed about that, I would have done that anyway. And the charity Alcoholics Anonymous is empowered to act without the authority of the fellowship of AA if it has to do something different because of the law, or because it believes the AA is at stake somehow. So there are times that Jonathan will override me. There are times I will override Jonathan. We both give each other that right at times. There are times when unilateral decisions have to be made. And it's not comfortable, but it does need to be done. But the important thing with the saying no to things, to do it in such a way that they know you still love them, but you have to put practical things first, and it's incredibly painful. Anything else?
Maybe I missed it. Just you talked before about 4 kinds of boundaries, and I heard only 2, but maybe
Okay.
I'm wrong.
So, the first one. So there are 2 which are to do with my behaviour, where I say no because I can't, no because I won't. I won't means I can, but I don't want to. There's a line in Friends where someone asks Phoebe to do something, and she says, I wish I could, but I don't want to. It's wonderful. It's a type of boundary. The second type of boundary is where I make a polite request. So I will literally say, Jonathan, I have a polite request. Would it be possible in the future? Don't criticise for the past. Say, in the future, would it be possible if you do this? And I forgot to mention this, and I think it's a useful thing. If I need to get something done, if I need someone else to do something, there are 5 stages. There are 5 ways of getting it done that I've learned in recovery. This is not in any tradition or any concept. It was just told to me. The first thing I do is I make a polite request, and they can say yes or no. The next thing is we can offer a transaction. If I do this, will you do that? So Jonathan and I, with looking after my mother, there is a transaction. He says, well, if you go today, I'll go tomorrow. So we're both offering something here. The third way of setting a boundary is by you tell someone openly what the consequence will be if they don't take a certain action. So I will say to students, if you email me the work late, it will not get marked. Then there is the silent presentation of a consequence. If someone sends me an aggressive text, it gets ignored. If a week later they send me a pleasant text, I reply. If they're playing join the dots, they'll start to learn if they want a response from me, it has to be polite. If it's angry or aggressive, I'm not going to respond. And people work it out. And the 5th way of getting something done, and I only do this if I have to, it's you use force. And I've used force to physically push someone out of a restaurant who was presenting a threat. You change the locks is another way of forcing something. You write the check. There are lots of things which just need to be done, and you just do them whether or not the other person has agreed. But I move gradually through these. I don't go to the number 5 without trying 1, 2, 3, and 4 first, because the higher you go on that list, the greater the price to the relationship, and common welfare and unity comes first. Anything else? Svi, would you like to help us close with the Serenity Prayer? God. serenity, to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.